You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma Podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. A huge shout out to Governor Anatobi for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by Hope is Alive. Hope is Alive exists to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. Join us Saturday, September 30th for our Sobriety Sprint 5K as we remember, honor, and celebrate those who've lost their lives. This family-focused event will feature a 1-mile fun run, inflatables, food trucks, and more. Register to run or honor a loved one at sobrietysprint.com. This podcast is brought to you by the Oklahoma Beef Council. On behalf of Oklahoma's 50,000 beef farming and ranching families, we are working hard every day to bring high-quality beef to your table. To learn more, visit oklabeef.org. That's oklabeef.org, linked below. What's up, guys? Here is our second Pistol Pete of our episode today. Please welcome Mr. John Price, who was Pistol Pete from 88 to 90 and is number 45. John, thanks so much for coming down to Ditch Witch today to share some stories.
My pleasure.
So, 88 to 90, team must have been pretty good during that period.
Yeah, we won a Heisman Trophy that year.
It's not a bad time to be a Pete, right?
Well, and let me say, I am certainly not taking credit for Barry Sanders' performance in any way, but I do think it's a bit of a coincidence that we haven't won one since I was Pete. So I'll just leave it at that. No, it was absolutely a fantastic time to be Pete.
Amazing. What a time to be alive. What a time to be that involved and that close to everybody. Before we dive into those stories, though, tell me a little bit about you. Are you Oklahoma born and raised?
Stillwater born and raised.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My dad was a career Army officer, and Stillwater was his last active duty assignment. Well, we went to Fort Leonard Wood for just briefly, but we didn't even sell the house in the Stillwater, came back to Stillwater.
Yeah.
And he was ready to retire. I was the youngest of the four boys, so I missed most of the Army traveling. You know, my brothers got to see Fort Benning and West Point and Leavenworth, Virginia Beach, but my traveling was pretty limited. So Stillwater was always home for me.
Yeah. Did you or your brothers think about going into the military following Dad?
Yeah. Thought about it, but with OSU right there in the backyard, we all ended up going there.
Yeah. So obviously very familiar with Pistol Pete growing up then.
Oh, sure.
And very, just it's there. His logo's everywhere. He's there. Like it's as a kid growing up, and being around that, especially growing up in Stillwater, must have been like, I mean, this guy he's a superhero.
Oh yeah. And we're actually getting ready, to get into my favorite time of year, because I think if you grow up in Stillwater, there's really something pretty special about the fall and homecoming and Halloween. It all just kind of, the cool weather, it all kinds of happens at once, Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. And walk around, even when I was a kid, was a big deal, and it's just continued to grow from there.
Yeah, and homecoming, I mean, it's America's brightest homecoming.
Oh, yeah.
It gets. I brought my parents over one year. They came over during homecoming. I said, well, let's go. So we went. They played Baylor, I think, a few years ago now. And my mom, my dad, my brother, I think just their eyes are open and jaws are on the floor the whole time. They couldn't believe like the scale of the day. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like being a part of that, leading the team and all the things that you got to do. But do you have a first memory of seeing a Pistol Pete? Do you have anything that stands out to you?
I think just seeing him on the field, and when you're a little kid, things always seem so much bigger. And the costume is big to anybody, but especially when you're small and growing up in Stillwater. He would come to school. He'd be at events. He was very visible, and just the scale and the proportion, I think, was always pretty striking. So
yeah. So you decide, don't want to go in the military. I think Oklahoma State's in my backyard. I'm going to go to OSU. What do you decide to study? What do you think you're going to go to school for?
Well, I had several majors while I was at OSU, but I ended up getting a history degree, and really enjoyed it, and had some great professors. And I think the most important thing that it taught me was I got out of school knowing how to read and write. And that sounds kind of silly or oversimplified, but it's served me really well, really well. Yeah,
to do it at a level that like you can make money doing it rather than driving a truck or something else. Like my aunt was my English teacher, and she got me through my English classes. I had a great math teacher who was a golfer, so he took pity on me and kind of taught me a different way than everybody else that I understood. But I think you're right. Like reading and writing as a skill level, it's extremely undervalued.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And it was great preparation for law school. Ultimately, I did go to law school, and I credit my OSU education with a lot of that.
Yeah. When do you make the decision to be a lawyer? Like was that very early on in your kind of college career? You mentioned a bunch of different majors.
I knew it was probably in the cards, one way or another. Wasn't sure exactly when I would go or where I would go or what I wanted to do with it. Yeah. But yeah, ended up going to law school just after college.
Okay. Why do you want to be in law school? Why do you want to be a lawyer?
Well, again, I thought in speaking with friends, not everybody who goes to law school practices law.
Sure.
And just great preparation for a lot of things, whether you wanted to, whatever career path you wanted to take. Ultimately, I worked for, in private practice briefly, but started working for contracting firms, and looked at a lot of contracting provisions, and was a contract officer for a couple of companies. And then ultimately, it's funny the way things work out, came back to OSU and worked in their legal counsel office as one of their attorneys, and my focus was really research contracts. Yeah. Worked with them for a long time.
It's amazing how life comes back full circle,
that's
right? Did you put on the resume, was Pistol Pete?
No. Yeah. People have a way of finding out.
They figure it out, right?
Yeah.
That's really cool that you end up, going back full circle moment and doing that. So when you go to OSU, before you get there, do you have any experience being a mascot before you get to OSU?
No.
Zero?
No.
It seems to be a trend.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that said that I've spoken to, the guys that I know at Pete's, they're like, no, we were never a mascot in high school.
Yeah. And I saw, it was really just, luck, fortune, I don't know what you want to call it, but I was sitting in the back of class one day and probably not paying as close of attention as I should, and I was flipping through the Ocali, and I saw an ad for Spirit Squad tryouts, and I was talking to the people around me, and I was like, hey, Pistol Pete. I was like, I could do that, and filled out the application, and a couple of weeks later, they sent me home with a 50-pound fiberglass head.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, what makes you think that I can do that? Like, you sat in the back of a classroom just like probably, looking for just something to get him excited about, and
Yeah, it was really funny. I just, I saw the ad and it said, Pom Pom Girls, varsity cheerleaders, and Pistol Pete. And, just like we were talking about earlier, you start to think about your history with Pistol Pete and, growing up seeing Pistol Pete, and you just think, wow, okay, yeah, there's actually somebody that does that. And now could be that person. So, went through the tryout process, and that was that.
What was that process?
We went to a couple of nights at the Colvin Center. The guys who are currently Pete had us come over, and they let us try on some of the stuff and put the head on and practice, and do a few skits and things like that, and just practice walking in the head. And then you went the following week or a couple of nights later, you met with a group of former Petes over in the athletic center, and it was an interview process and kind of a combination of things. They'd ask you some questions, they'd go over your resume with you, they'd talk about academics, and then you had to have a skit that you had prepared, so you did a little skit, and then finally you'd put the head on and kind of do some impromptu situations, and then later that night they announced it.
Yeah.
So, but it was about 3, 4, 5 former Petes.
Okay.
Walked us through the process.
Yeah. What years were you in school when you did that?
I tried out my sophomore year, so that'd been I think it was the spring of my sophomore year.
Okay.
And I did it my sophomore and junior years, I think.
Yeah. And because it's 2-year terms, right?
No, it's a 1-year term.
Oh, just 1 year term.
1 year term.
So they roll over.
Yeah, I tried out again. I tried out twice for the next. So I did it. I tried out. First year I tried out was 88 to 89, and then tried out again and did it 89 to 90.
Okay. And like we said, I mean, the football team was pretty epic at that time.
Yeah.
So everyone loves, everything's going well when the football team's doing well.
Yeah.
Right. So your job's a lot easier when the football team's doing well because you're busy, you're always out on the field, you're not kind of getting through games.
And especially with Barry, winning the Heisman that year, there were just so many opportunities for press and media and picture taking, and it seemed like we had just a lot of things to do, which was great. I mean, it was all part of it.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what are those kind of really cool memories and stories from those moments where, like I said, you got so much media attention from, arguably the greatest of all time to play at Oklahoma State, and obviously wins a Heisman, and then you have Thurman Thomas as well, which as well. But like, what's that like being a part of that and being a Pete, and they want you there, right? They want to see, the head and everything. Yeah,
he wouldn't remember me, but we did talk on occasion because we'd go to things together. He and I'd show up at the same place at the same time, and I remember there was a charity basketball tournament that he went to. I saw him dunk a basketball, which was one of the most amazing physical feats I've ever seen. And then it was funny because we're standing there, and I'm standing there with the leading Heisman Trophy candidate, and I put on the head, and all the kids come running to me. And then afterwards, we're talking about it, and he says, "Man, they just wanted to see you." I said, "Well, I get, But he was such it still is by all accounts. I mean, just a really great, humble, down-to-earth guy. He was a pleasure to be around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, he wouldn't remember me, but we just, during that time, we interacted some,
Such great moments. We through kind of out this podcast, and you talk about Frank Eaton and the history and the legacy of that, right? And every Pete has their story, and every Pete has their moments in time. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of your colleagues and fraternity brothers in the Pete Club that are very jealous of the time that you had. Yeah. Because we were talking to Gary just before you, and he's like, the team was not good when I was there, and it was, and then like I said, which you can't plan that. Obviously, it's kind of fate how that works, but what a time to be a part of it. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. Yeah. And it was fun to see it it was fun to see it evolve because it was happening to all of us at the same time. It was kind of like, and I remember Coach Jones one time, making a speech to the team or press conference. I'm trying to remember the context exactly, but it was kind of like, okay, this is getting serious. We are on the verge of something really, really big. And sure enough, it was a great season. Barry wins the Heisman, the whole thing. Kind of a level of success that really we had not. That was kind of the first taste of it,
Yeah. So tell me about stuff off the field. What's it like, or what are the experiences you had off the field? Obviously people know you for basketball and football games, but as we talk about in this podcast, there's a lot of other extracurricular stuff that you guys go to: birthdays, weddings, kids' parties, whatever it is. What was that like during your era?
I was amazed at, and I wish I've got it somewhere. This was before iPhones and digital calendars and all that. But we each had a book, a calendar book that we kept in our pocket, and we just logged the events. And we knew, okay, we've got to be at Glencoe Founders Day parade on Saturday at 9 a.m. and we just kept a list. And it's throughout the year, it's hundreds of events. And I think the thing that struck me was how many different types and how varied they were. We were heavily involved with Special Olympics. We did birthday parties, we did weddings, we did just any number. I did a reception for a funeral. If I remember, and so there's no limit to what you can do. And when we would host things on campus, when we would have visitors, whether it was people locally, kids, or foreign delegations that came to campus, sometimes we'd have foreign visitors that would come and meet professors and department meetings and things like that. Sometimes they'd have us show up, say hello, photo ops, that type of thing. So it was really limitless, the number of, because there's a certain amount of bigger branding that goes along with Pete. It's not just, it kind of transcends the mascot, the typical mascot, and I think with that comes a little higher level of responsibility and accountability and things like that.
Yeah. Anybody that you got to meet that you were like, wow, if I wasn't Pete, there's no way I'm meeting this person?
Oh gosh, I'd have to. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one, because you're limited on. We didn't have any presidents visit when I was Pete, and a lot of times, with the head on, you're kind of, you're really only supposed to talk to law enforcement and field officials, and then if the conversation goes much beyond a couple of words, you step aside and take the head off and have the conversation. So but we got to travel. We went to the Holiday Bowl. The team, Pete did not make, that was the year we also went to the Tokyo Bowl. Pete did not make that trip. Okay. But we went to the Holiday Bowl. One of my years we played Ohio State. And I went, and we would, there were two of us, so we'd trade off. And my partner that year, Kent Wallstead, he went to the Ohio State game, and I went to some ESPN event, later on that year. So, because you have to accommodate for, we are in school, so you got to look at test schedules and commitments and things like that. But
people forget that.
Yeah.
You're like, they look at your schedule, and you're like, you have zero time for anything other than being a Pete.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which, it's a lot of fun, obviously. And you get to see, be in rooms and go to weddings and birthdays and have a great time. Or, just stand there and get photos taken. Gary was joking earlier. He said there's one thing that's really funny is that when you stand and take photos, nobody can see you smiling. But he's like, I find myself smiling all the time.
Oh, yeah.
No one can tell because they can't see your face, but
I
thought that was kind of hilarious, that it's natural reaction to smile when someone takes your picture, but no one can see your face. I thought that was awesome. What's life been like outside, on the other side? Like, are you involved in the selection committee? Do you get the events? I'm sure you guys get together, obviously first of the year's just gone, first game of the year. So there's a Spurs presentation for that game. What's it like being on the other side and being a part of that kind of Pete fraternity?
Yeah, it's really great because you get to perpetuate the legacy, and you get to see the group grow.
Yeah.
Because my math isn't that great, but 35 years ago or whatever it was when I was Pete, there weren't as many of us. And now there's a much larger number, and it really has kind of continued to evolve into this, fraternity type group. And the guys have gotten more organized on the types of things they're trying to do and how they're, protecting Pete's legacy with the Spurs ceremony and some of the other things. So it's been great to see that build. It's been great to see that build.
Yeah. Well, what's it been like then? Are you still working for the university, or have you moved on from that?
No, I work for a nonprofit. I work for a nonprofit now. So yeah.
Which nonprofit?
I work for the Sigma Chi Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're still very involved with
my national fraternity.
Yeah.
But yeah,
gotcha.
and still living in Stillwater because of the ability to telecommute and things like that. So
yeah,
live near campus still.
I can't imagine how that feels to be be a part of that Frank Eaton legacy and a part of Oklahoma State legacy and still live in town, and you don't strike me as the person to walk around and be like, hey, Pistol Pete 45, like, let me in, can I have dinner or whatever? You're not that, you don't strike me as that kind of person. But also, like, just to have, like, to be someone who grew up in Stillwater and kind of, I haven't met someone that's more Stillwater than you, if that makes sense, right? Like, grew up there, went to school, like, does that make sense?
I mean, all the way through. I was born in the old hospital. Went through Westwood, graduated, served on the local school board. So yeah, I'm kind of Stillwater through and through.
Yeah. Where do you see the future going? It sounds like you want to be involved, in obviously the Pete's and the guys around. Like, what is there any future plans that you guys are working on as a group, or want this to go? And
well, I think they just.
Legacy?
I think they continue to get more organized. And also look at not just the recognition and the protecting Pete's legacy, but also the Eaton legacy, and then taking that next step as our numbers grow to really look at what we can do for the university. How we can, because first and foremost, that's why everybody becomes a Pete, is because they love OSU. And I think as you see this group grow, it provides the opportunity to give back to OSU. What can the Petes do to help? And I think that's probably the next logical, step in the evolution.
Yeah. Do you have family members that, kids or family members that are going to want to be Petes?
No, mine were occupied with other things and stayed very busy in school. But all of mine, I've got one left. And she's my last one, getting ready to graduate. But all of my kids have gone through OSU. Yeah. Yeah, all four.
Were you able to put the head on that kind of daughter's son's birthday parties and be around that?
No, I didn't get the chance to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think the last time I even. Maybe one of the anniversaries or something when we're all kind of standing around, we get the opportunity. I haven't
had back on.
Yeah, I haven't had it on in a long time.
Yeah,
long time.
I assume it evolves over time, right? The head might change, or like it gets, I think Gary was saying it gets bumped and nicked, and there's not just, but it makes sense that there's two of you because there's so much stuff to do. Mm-hmm. Do you ever see it scaling to 3?
Maybe. It certainly could. They'd have to build another head because there are 2 heads that are almost identical.
Okay.
There's some minor. Again, I haven't seen them, up close inside in a long time, but there's some minor differences inside, kind of on the way they're just the frame and stuff. But on the outside, they're very, very similar. Yeah. And the skin color's changed a little bit. The hair's gotten a little darker. They've done, the paint colors have, they continue to keep it in great shape. But it's gotten more, I don't want to say professional looking, but the head is really well taken care of. And it also continues to progress a little bit as far as, fitting with the branding and things like that and the color schemes and all that. Yeah. So, but I can't remember, when I was Pete, there was one gentleman who was getting up there in years, but he had done the work on the Pete head a number of times and would recondition it and things like that. I couldn't tell you where it goes now, but I do know they get sent away every once in a while to be totally kind of refurbished and things like that.
I mean, it's kind of important.
Oh yeah. And they do get, the reality is they do get beat up, and we would be responsible for fixing little things here. And again, it's so much more. I don't know what you would call it, professionalized or this, but it used to be back in the day that Pete was kind of the unofficial driver for the Spirit Squad. We were usually the ones driving the bus and loading the luggage and kind of taking roll and stuff like that. Now I'm sure it's gotten much more sophisticated. But also, like, if we dinged the head or something, there used to be a store in town, Chuck's Paint and Paper. And it was kind of well known for helping with homecoming and providing all night supplies for the pompers and things like that. And there were a couple of occasions where I took the Pete head into Chuck and said, "Okay, we got a crack here, and it's not going back to be fixed till the summer. So what can we do?" And he'd match the paint. We'd spackle and epoxy and get it ready to go again.
That's awesome. What
Stillwater was a much smaller. I didn't mean to interrupt, but Stillwater was a much smaller town. I'm stating the obvious, but growing up there, and then when I was in school, Stillwater was a much smaller town.
Social media and everything has just made the world so much more accessible, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't do anything now without someone seeing it or something.
Yeah. And that would be what would make me the most nervous as Pete, is just the level of scrutiny.
Yeah.
You got to be. I mean, it was certainly incumbent on us to always make good decisions and be thoughtful on those types of things. But you've got to be just so vigilant now. In that arena, it's tricky.
It is, and the head is massive, and you can barely see what you're doing. Is there any misconceptions around kind of being Pistol Pete, or stuff that you didn't know going in that you figured out once you were in there that they didn't tell you, or anything that stands out?
No, I think one of the things that jumped out at me is just you learn as you go. You learn as you go, and we were lucky enough when I was Pete to have Dave Martin, who was super involved and a great sounding board for questions and anytime we'd have an issue. But I think the thing that really struck me as Pete is, you literally get handed the head, and here's 5 events you've got to go to over the next 2 weeks as you get started here. Have fun. And you're kind of like, okay, well, which door do I walk in? Do I change here? Do I change there? Do I, and I think now with more guys and more time, there's more of a kind of an indoctrination process, and it's a little more formalized, things like that. But it was kind of like, there you go, have fun.
Well, and which door does the head fit through as well, right?
Yeah.
Like people don't think of that.
Yeah.
Showing up to a birthday or a wedding, and you're like, guys, like, I need to get the head through the door somehow. Yeah. I don't want to open the double doors and ruin someone's wedding surprise.
Well, and you learn pretty quick, because I think I took over as Pete, and I immediately started going to baseball games.
Okay.
And I figured out the height of the head right away as I was walking through Allie P. Reynolds Stadium at the time. I hit my head a couple times and then figured it out that, okay, here's where I have to duck, here's what I have to do.
Yeah. Finishing up, do you have anything like a prized possession at the office back home or somewhere that you have from that time as Pete?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did get to meet and spend some time with Boone Pickens a couple of times when Karsten was first being developed, and just when he was on campus, and he signed his book for me. And in the book, it says, "To my pal, John Price, Pistol Pete, let's make a deal, Boone." And I still have it on my bookshelf. So it's one of my prized possessions from the time, if not the prized possession.
Yeah.
Because you look at what he did for the university, and a guy who truly, walked the walk.
That's a pretty special thing
Yeah.
to keep, right? And
Yeah.
to have. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I mean, I can't thank you enough for coming down. I
again,
really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
you coming down here and sharing some stories and from that time and and the time that you were Pete, and just to be a part of that legacy and continue the Eaton story, and continue to be a part of it. Obviously, you're OSU born and bred, so
Yeah.
it's good to be around. And next time I'm in town, I'm gonna have to reach out to you and return the favor and take you to lunch or get a coffee or something, because I come up once a month maybe. So I'm gonna have to come up and see you.
Yeah,
Say
please
hello.
do. Please do. Anytime.
Awesome. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next episode. Cheers. Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This podcast is brought to you by the Oklahoma Beef Council. On behalf of Oklahoma's 50,000 beef farming and ranching families, we are working hard every day to bring high quality beef to your table. To learn more, visit oklabeef.org. That's oklabeef.org, linked below. This episode is brought to you by Hope is Alive. Hope is Alive exists to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. Join us Saturday, September 30th for our Sobriety Sprint 5K as we remember, honor, and celebrate those who've lost their lives. This family-focused event will feature a 1-mile fun run, inflatables, food trucks, and more. Register to run or honor a loved one at sobrietysprint.com.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.